All right, Sharon has her glasses and we can begin. I'd like to open with this poem that was written by Becca Stevens after a recent trip to Ghana. And she was feeling like, what is the point of all the work that we all do? They're like they're just little passes at big problems. And if you know Becca Stevens, you know her work is, I don't know if she considers that a little pass, like 90 ministries and all the work that she's done in the last 30 years. But it is a lot. And when you see all the need in the world, it can feel like that to us. Like, that's just like, what is it going to matter what I do? What does it matter what I do? So she had been, and then she was greeted at her trip by this nun who had been taking care of women and children who had been kidnapped, raped, abused, used from the Sudanese soldiers. And there's a group of women plus 300 children that these nuns take care of. And they were there to talk to them about a project that they're working on together. And so she wrote this, and I think she woke up. This is the way Becca Stevens thinks, because she woke up with this poem and the reason why she was there. You know, so here's the poem. It's called Safe. Being safe on a path towards justice is almost a dream, beyond a horizon of lofty ideals. Old stones sit in the hollow of my heart, like sentries guarding entrance. But in God's mercy that falls like rain on all of us, morning comes. The sun rises softly, wrapped in misty blankets, infusing prayers with a vision of peace that quiets the noise in our heads. The morning doves begin a song of love, like an opening hymn, welcoming home, sweet child. Amen. Amen.
That's good.
It is good. It is good. I'll send that out to you all. Okay.
Tell me one in
Yes.
a few sentences who, I don't know who.
Becca Stevens, that she's a priest in the Episcopal Church who serves at St. Augustine's at Vanderbilt. In Nashville, where she's been for many years, but she's also the founder of Thistle Farms.
Which is good.
If you've probably heard of, she started by taking women that wanted to come off the streets in Nashville. They began to figure out ways to be industrious, make products mostly, soothing lotions, things that calm. It grew into homes for them to live in as they came back into the world. People out of jail, people off the street. And then it grew into a cafe, then it grew into 2 cafes. And then she's been around the world where like today, she's talking about the yarn that she's going to be importing from Himalayan gals who make yarn from merino wool and silk and sell that. So in different places, like in Norway, there are groups of people who knit, and then they're their own organizations, but she gives them a platform to sell their products. That's basically it. So she has 90 ministries around the country. I don't care if it's tea, candles, soap, sewing.
Thistle Farms cream is good.
Thistle Farm cream.
Plenty.
Yeah, it's very good. And Thistle Farm candles smell good. And, there's all that about it. So she is going to be the Women of Faith speaker because we're in charge of it next August.
25. Yeah.
So we've hired her to come and speak. So.
Speak here?
Yeah, it will be here. I think it will get a lot of people to come.
So all of these 90 ministries are ladies who are trying to get out of the street.
No, but some of them might be, how do we reclaim our community? In some ways, it's all about reclaiming community. So if that's like in Ukraine, these knitters who made beautiful Christmas stockings, I bought several last year, beautiful Christmas stockings. So that's a group of women who are trying to organize themselves when their husbands and sons and brothers are off fighting a war, or when their communities are torn apart. So in Peru, same thing. When men have gone to work in the big city, how do the women then gather themselves together and what do they create? So it could be any number of things. It is women-centered ministry, but it's in places where it could have been what something else is like.
Kate called, she's trying to join, but she's got a new iPad and can't get to the link, so.
Okay. Well, I had to get the HDMI.
Oh,
Plugged
yeah, I
in.
forgot.
It's okay. It all worked out. So we're waiting on Kate. Okay, but is that good, a couple sentences? You know, because I can talk for like 2 days, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just look her up. Thistle Farms, or Rebecca Stevens, you can get on her mailing list. And she doesn't write like every day or once a week, but when she does, it's very, it's always self-reflective. This is, I think, what ties in again to Another Way, that it starts from a place of self-reflection and then moves out. Doesn't start with like, what am I gonna do to help y'all?
What does she write on, a blog or?
Yeah, she has a blog, yeah.
Seems to me she got started on all of her stuff because she was abused as a child.
Yes. Her daddy was an Episcopal priest who was killed in an automobile accident when she was 6. She was the youngest of 5. And then the guy that came in to take his place in their parish, abused her. So, and then she eventually forgave him. I'm not suggesting anybody has to do that. This is her path.
She did it
But
face
she
to
did,
face.
she did. That's enough, face to face. So she's got an incredible story, but again, she always starts from here. It is not about starting from out there somewhere. And I think if anything you get from the book would be when we're talking about, these self-awakening questions. This is the whole crux of chapter 2 and 3, self-awakening questions. And, how do we, did you get a copy?
I did.
Okay.
Shall I go make a copy?
No, I have a bunch over here.
Okay.
So, anyway, I think as you look around the world, hi Kate's iPad number 2. As you look around the world or look around your life, that you will see that people who have, I don't know, had an impact on you or had an impact in some phase of life, they're going to be operating in the same way. This isn't like, oh, that's just her one-off. Or Martin Luther King, that's just a one-off. Or it's not a one-off.
That's their core.
That's their core. Exactly. That's where they start. And it's not, I didn't say it was easy. And I'm not even saying it's fun. I don't think there's anything connected to that at all. It's the ability to be able to do that. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning. It's been a struggle.
It's okay. Life is a struggle.
That's what it is.
All right. The quote that begins chapter 2 is this MLK quote that comes from a sermon / lecture / speech that Martin Luther King gave, which I encourage you at the end of this to go home and hear. It's a 45-minute speech about being awake, and it's a tremendous one. And he talks about the rich man and Lazarus, and he talks about how that is part of our story and how we are awake to where we are. And this is where he introduces the Poor People's Campaign, and when he first becomes very vocal about his resistance to the Vietnam War. So, and people,
Sorry.
the page that we're at 47, he's anyway, in that speech, he does a lot because, he knows he's about the civil rights movement and blah, 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 and how people have urged him to like, stay in your own lane. Like, okay, you can have all the civil rights stuff you want. Stay out of poor people's lives, stay out of the Vietnam War protests. And he said, I can't, because they're all part of that same thing. This is all part of who I am and what God, where I am and what I'm supposed to do. So, if you can find I think there's a lot of written things. I listened to it last night again. It's just, there's nothing particular about the way Martin Luther King spoke. There's nothing particular about it.
Oh, his cadence.
But the cadence, you get, it just takes you in. I don't think anybody would listen to me for 45 minutes. I'm glad I don't have to prove that right or wrong.
I would.
Yes, thank you. All right, so can someone read that? It's on the top of your handout, which I emailed.
What chapter? What chapter are we on?
The top of chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Okay.
Thank you.
In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All humans are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. You can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality.
Okay, so you can see now how this ties in later in the chapter to this understanding of Ubuntu. I see you, you see me. That I cannot be who I am totally until you are who you are totally. This is very different than most Western kinds of ways of seeing the world. I have the right answer, and this is the way we're going to do it. I guess that's a one way to get things done. All is saying it in another way is there are other ways to get things done that honor and respect everyone's dignity. It's not far from our baptismal covenant, is it? Right? The last part of our covenant is to respect the dignity of every human being. That's what it means. I see you and you see me. Meaning, if I really truly see you, what does that mean? I see the God in you.
Yeah. It's more than seeing,
Yeah.
because it's hearing you, understanding you, being in your shoes.
It being you, in a sense. Yeah.
And then with you.
Yeah.
I love the concept that we are not alive until someone else sees us.
And I've talked a bit about Gregory Ellison, the professor at Emory, and his work that he's done called Fearless Dialogues. And this is where he just goes, we had him come to Holy Innocents, so it's been a minute ago, and he brought a couple of his students, and it's Holy Innocents, it's the Bob Johnson lecture. So when Michael Sullivan was there, we started the Bob Johnson lectures, like the bishop, right, of Western North Carolina was the rector at Holy Innocents before he went on to serve as the bishop. But so we started this lecture series in his honor. And so people are all dressed up. It's a fancy meal. The room looks beautiful, flower arrangements. Everybody's in their finest. And there's no agenda. And Gregory Ellison just goes up to people with his students, and his students go up to people and just start saying, I see you. And people are like, what? So it took a minute to move that group off of their sort of, this is a dinner, I'm being served. Someone's going to tell me something about something wonderful, like we normally do.
Yeah.
And that was the program. And then he talked about his work, about trying to get people, what he recognized was some people talk to each other. He's a black man. I mean, his parents were educated. He's educated, like sixth generation educated black man, but he's wearing a ball cap. Right? He's not wearing a suit. He doesn't have a name tag on that said Dr. Gregory Ellison III
With lots of different things behind it.
right, with all the letters or whatever, ribbons on his jacket. No, he just had on a ball cap. And the students that he brought with him were like green hair, black, tattooed, earrings, piercings. They're not the normal kind of, whatever that means. They just didn't look like everyone else in the room. So it took a while to sort of, they let it sit there for a while and saw if anyone approached them.
Yeah.
And there were one or two. And then it opened up. When we go into a room, who do you look for?
Somebody I know.
Somebody you know. Of course. I do. Sharon, on the other hand, looks for someone she doesn't know. So that part I know. Especially, or if Maisie's there, she particularly goes to someone she doesn't know. So,
Allison, I had a kind of wanted to make, there was a roundtable discussion or something that I was watching on the news the other day, and this person was interviewing kids, teenagers, about the upcoming election, and the moderator was asking them, if you could ask the presidential candidate anything, what might you ask? And this boy who had identified as a gay kid immediately looked up and into the camera and said, "Do you see me as a human being?" Which is, to me, exactly what you're talking about. Do you see me as that? And he would have to at least start there, and I'm not sure you can start there with me.
Yes, it is, and I'm glad he phrased it that way too, aren't you? Like, do you see me? Because often it's easier for us to disregard something when we don't see it. Right? I'm not gonna see that. I'm not, and I don't. And what has been the difference between, even in our own United States history, right? Do we see people of color as human beings? And of course, for centuries, that was untrue. It's a lot easier to mistreat someone or ignore someone when you, in your mind or in your heart, they're not human.
You can do that because you can sing, "I can see you as a child of God."
That's right, I can sing that.
And it even goes beyond humans. How can you be cruel to animals? I mean, because they are beings. They have eyes that look at you, and they can be very sad, so they can be delightfully joyful.
Yes.
But,
Well, I think the same thing could be said of nature,
yes,
of our creation, of the created world. How can we be destructive of something we know was gift and given to us, right? So yes, in many aspects, there's an overflowing of that grace, right? That comes from God. So that overflowing happens. If I'm able to see you as you, then I'm also able to see the vitality and agency of everything and the responsibility that carries with it. Now, how would we then translate all of that? Right, those are words, I'm saying them, I'm telling you things. But how do we translate it into the very way we hold a meeting? Right? The very way we gather together as family, I don't know, perhaps, right? As a church, as a community organization, at the dog park with your friends. I mean, it's not limited in any way, but it does encourage me to change kind of how am I working to make a safe space? Am I examining my own motives, before I enter? Do I know what my own flashes are? What triggers me? Am I aware of that? That's just being self-aware. And that's what the self-awakening questions do. And I think before we get there with this group, we have not clearly established a covenant of behavior. And I want to make sure that we're clear on that so that we're all creating a safe space, right? So that no one feels like, oh, I'm out or I'm in or I'm not as good as or whatever. I can't help how anyone feels, but maybe if we all decide to, work by the same standards, then we would do that. So if we look on page, you have a copy of the field guide.
I'm sorry.
I have extra.
She comes prepared.
Oh, boy.
What page did you
I
say?
haven't said yet, okay. We're gonna start on page 21. Now, they list, many more than I think, it would be different for each group and for the reason for the group's gathering. And so I looked through, what are these, 18 on page 21, 22, 23, and 24, kind of what are those covenants of behavior to make sure that we are comfortable with, how we're all operating together. Does that make sense? Okay. And,
Allison, is this back in chapter 1 now?
it's in the field.
Well, I'm on Kindle and the book, sometimes the numbers go different, so.
Well, it's in the field guide.
It's a different book.
You see the handout that
okay.
it's the first week in the little folder, it's this little field guide.
Okay, I don't have it with me.
So
I
we're
don't-
gonna read it. we're gonna read them out loud. It was contained in an email that you got before the class started, but if you weren't able to print it or you haven't been to a meeting. So we're gonna read these covenants out loud. This is gonna be tedious. I apologize. But if I can just start with Sharon. Sharon, will you read? And then we're just gonna go I wanna rush, but we'll go kind of quickly. All right?
Read from how to lead the covenants of
How
presence.
about number 1, be fully present on page 22?
Page 22?
It's in the field guide, not in the book. Kate?
All right.
Hey,
I don't have the field guide. Okay.
That's right.
So that's why you're gonna be listening with
All
Earth.
right, I am listening. I'm sorry.
Number 1, be fully present, extend welcome, and presume we are welcome. We all work best in spaces where we're fully present and welcomed. Let us set aside the usual distractions of things undone from yesterday and things we must do tomorrow. Let us support each other by giving and receiving the gift of hospitality.
We come as equals. We don't have the same gifts and graces, so let us be reminded that no person's gifts and graces are more or less important than another's.
Stay curious about each other. Curiosity helps create good conversation and enables us to share our deep longings and real fears when we feel others are genuinely interested in us. Let us be inquisitive and invested in one another.
Recognize that we need each other's help to become better listeners. Let us listen intently to what is shared and the feelings beneath our words. As Quaker Douglas Steer writes, to listen another's soul into life, into a condition of disclosure and discovery, may be almost the greatest gift we can offer to another.
Slow down so we have time to think and reflect. Conversation creates the conditions for us to rediscover the joy of thinking together. Let us take time to enjoy each other's company and remember to pause between our thoughts, to give each other time to reflect on what has been shared and to hear each other into deeper speech.
Expect conversations to be messy at times. Life doesn't move in straight lines, and neither does a good conversation. Let us assume that our ideas, observations, and conversations all come from a desire to create the future we all long to see. Consider that our ideas build upon each other, even if we can't see how they look logically one to another.
Number 7, embrace constructive conflict. Welcome diverse perspectives and seek to understand and learn what's at stake for the other person. Because we're not all alike. It's only through listening with curiosity and without judgment that together we can construct an alternative perspective that embraces what's at stake for all.
Know that it is possible for us to emerge from our time together refreshed, surprised, and less burdened than when we came in. Let us believe that this time can provide renewal, refreshment, and possibilities. That seeds planted here will keep growing and flourish in the days ahead in service to God's church and renewing work in the world.
Author your story. We all have a story. Some might say, I don't have a story, or I don't have a story worth telling. But you do, and the world is in need of hearing it. You must claim authorship of your own story and learn to tell it to others so they might understand you, be inspired by you, and discover what caused you to be who you are, to do what you do, or to love what you love.
Hold these conversations with care. There are many people who will benefit from the conversations and stories they hear during our time together. Imagine hearing one another as you would listen to scripture, attentively, mindfully, and open to the holy.
No fixing. We are not here to set someone else straight, right a wrong, or provide therapy. We are here to witness God's presence and movement in the sacred stories we share.
Turn judgment to wonder. Set aside your judgments. By creating a space between judgments and reactions, we can learn we can listen to another person and to ourselves more fully. If you find yourself becoming judgmental or cynical, try turning to wonder and ask, I wonder why she shared that story or made those choices. Or I wonder what my reaction teaches me. Or I wonder what he is feeling right now.
Practice confidentiality. We create a safe space by respecting the nature and content of stories shared. If anyone asks that a story shared be kept in confidence, the group will honor that request.
Be mindful and respectful of time. We all have something important to share. And the discipline of time invites us to focus and make particular choices about what to share and how much to share, so that we might hear the deep longings of another's soul.
Love the questions themselves. Let your questions linger. Release the compulsion to answer them or to have them answered. Trust the question to guide you toward loving first what you do not altogether understand. As the poet Rainer Marie Rilke says, have patience with all that remains unsolved within your heart.
Okay. So, do you think we might come up with a list of 4 that would be good for this group? I think understanding the underlying stuff is probably helpful. And it isn't anything you probably haven't heard before. I don't think there's, or maybe there was. Was there new information in here that you had not ever heard or thought about? So we pretty much, bits and pieces of this have been a part of how we do business, in a sense, right? But maybe being intentional about them. So what's your favorite? We'll just do it that way. Which one you really like?
Mine was author your story.
Okay.
And it
Which number, Fred?
was number 9.
Okay.
And I immediately wrote down next to it, what is my story? Question mark. I mean, I want to dwell on that. I'm not sure I'm ready to say what my story is, but I know there's one.
Yeah.
I don't believe there isn't one.
Right. Okay. What is my story? That may be very good focus for all of us, possibly. When you came, you told me why, what about this brought you here? And part of that is your story, right? But what is your story? Number 9. Anyone else?
Number 2,
Let me read that one for me.
we come as equals. We don't have the same gifts and graces. So let us be reminded that no person's gifts and graces are more or less important than another's.
That's something small. And that's what it's a combination. I like to embrace constructive conflict tremendously.
That's number 7.
That's number 7, because to me, it's so tied into 12 too, because when you're embracing constructive conflict, you're going to be asking these questions. You should be asking these questions. Why do they see it this way? You should be seeking from them to understand. You should also be reflecting in yourself how they see it that way and think about it.
Anything else? Awesome.
I don't know, I guess no fixing, left out of it.
Because you can see how that fits into so many of these other ones, right?
Yeah.
Because if we project out a fix, what are we not doing?
we are the expert.
But we're controlling too.
Yeah,
We're not listening to them, we're just listening to us.
right,
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah.
So that's a very tangible way, if I stop myself from, if I know this is a rule of our group, you know, Sharon starts telling me how she fell down on the way in, and I don't ask how she's feeling, I just wanna bring her a Band-Aid. You know, of course, if she's losing a lot of blood, I realize it. Probably that analogy won't work, but you get the idea that maybe that, and what is the wonder question behind it, instead of wanting to fix someone,
Yeah,
what is the wonder question behind that? And that may not be something you never ask out loud, right? I'm not saying it's appropriate to say,
Well,
I wonder why you feel that way. I don't know that we're gonna get into that business, but our own wondering.
I like number one, be fully present.
Yeah,
mhm.
being fully present is a good thing. Why is that a good thing for you?
Well, because I think if I'm fully present and I'm able to listen to the others and I get the full story, I can share the full story.
Which reminds me, I need to cut off my phone.
Please do, thank you. All right, so mine is, because I'm in charge, I'm not in charge, but the slow down part. Because I think, I have this much information, I have to get it all out. If you don't get this on, then we don't have to do it next week, and we won't have enough time, and blah, 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 right? That's internal for me. I hope that never presents, but it is internal for me. And I'm like that about most things. Meetings, gatherings, functions, doesn't really matter, whatever you wanna call them. I'm about, okay, what's the end point? Let's get to it. Let's go. I got things to do, which I don't know what those are, other than being right there in the room with what we've committed to do. Right there in the room. So I'm wondering, could we come up with a list of 4? Could we rewrite them? Could we combine them? I'm happy to be the scribe, right? And we can then know what our expectations are of each other and of ourselves. And mostly it's about our expectations of ourselves. And treating each other, what was that one part? That's something that said in here about like we would be inquisitive and invested in one another. What a lovely feeling to know that you all might be as invested in me as I am in you. And I'm curious about that.
That's a good feeling.
And, you know, we can't legislate some of these things, but I think if we start with a model, and then we have an expectation of a safe space. That's when, number one, that's the acronym, right? Create a safe space. And we're still in week 4. We're still working on creating our safe space. But we meet for an hour, so I get that, right? That's the expectation. So, move on to task. Which one shall be our guiding principles?
From these 8, 7, or 8 that we picked.
Yes, because I just think, I mean, we can take all 8, but I think realistically, it might be a lot, but if you want all the 8 that you all pick, that'll be them. You can agree to that, that's fine.
Yeah, we picked 5, yeah.
Okay, so we have be fully present, number 1,
1,
okay? 2, we come as equals,
okay.
Yeah, on the second.
5,
okay, slow down.
Wait a minute.
I will send this out, y'all, so you know what we've chosen, okay?
Okay, I'm writing as fast as I can.
Yeah, I guess you would have to be, yeah.
7,
7, embrace constructive conflict, okay?
9, author your story.
And author your story.
and no fixing.
And then
No, fix it.
So, yeah, we had to end up with 6.
and then
Initially.
I also had
The other 8.
number 12. I thought you had 7 and 12.
Well, I did, 'cause I said, well, and 12 really supports most of them.
Uh-huh,
So instead of 7, shall we just say turn judgment to wonder?
That's fine.
Okay, all right. So what I have, back on page 22, I have number 1, number 2, number 5, number 9, number 11, and number 12.
1, 2, 5, 9, and what?
12,
11, 12.
11, 12.
Thanks.
Okay?
Mhm.
I will reconstruct that and to be a covenant of principle for us, and we'll get that out to you this afternoon, okay?
Right.
All right.
You're like a machine.
No.
No one may help.
All right, so now that we got that out of the way, we move down our sheet to say, unless there's anything else you all would like to say about any of that. And I don't want to rush, but if you have questions, something you're thinking about.
I just want to say, if I can internalize number 12, it will change my life.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Because my tendency is to look at, I'm almost like a engineer. I look at a situation and say, what is the problem? How can it be fixed? So that will change my life if I can turn
Why we have no fixing.
Yes, to start that by saying, I wonder.
Well, it's, it's funny, and I guess this just proves that this, on occasion, is a problem of mine. But I can turn judgment to wonder by hearing what you're saying and then wondering what the hell is wrong with you.
Wonder why. Yeah.
So,
I know, as opposed to, I wonder why they use,
so sorry, that's where my head goes on.
You can put an asterisk by my name when you say that.
So so I wonder,
yeah, but
what might be I mean, wonder what,
but that's
where
where
it has to happen next, or what's the follow-up to that? What's underlying that, you know?
It generally means that there's something in me that needs to be changed.
Or looked at, or examined.
Or examined.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's that embrace constructive conflict. You're like, okay, that was not embracing it. That wasn't what. You didn't scream at her, but there's no curiosity into why they think that.
Yeah, it's more than curiosity.
Well, I like the statement that they made further in that paragraph, which was, first of all, I wonder why she shared that story or made those choices. And then it's followed up by, I wonder what my reaction teaches me,
Mm-hmm.
So what does it say about me when I go, yeah, I wonder why you're so weird,
I know mine's usually a little bit more coarse.
Yes, well, I was,
Yeah.
That was the key thing I started when we read them the first time was, I wonder what my reaction teaches me.
Okay, so we're always back to self. And there's something I read yesterday when I was reviewing the chapter. It's not about an internal navel gazing exercise. It's only about then how that connects us to the community. So since the 70s or the late 60s, we've had these conversations. Why am I reacting like that? This isn't new conversation, but that to me was, oh, that's the difference. This is about improving myself in some way, but it's about how am I going to be part of a community, right? So it takes it to this, and maybe it always was supposed to go there, which is the authors, certainly it's their perspective that this model is demonstrated in many different cultures, indigenous generally cultures that have used practices like this for hundreds and thousands of years before the Western model of how we converse, how we learn, how we study, how we make decisions, how we solve problems came into, being what is the sea we swim in now. That's just what we know is how we do things. And he goes on to say, maybe this is the reason we have so many problems because our thinking has become very black and white. There's
Amen.
There's a way to do it, there's a way not to do it. And a lot of our thinking and problem solving is reflected in that. And that may be why at this juncture in life, maybe why some of our problems seem insurmountable because they cannot be dealt with by black and white. Not to get too political, I won't even say what I was going to say. But I will. Maybe you can't just close a border. That is one answer. Maybe you can't just open the border. I mean, you know what I'm saying? the creative answer and the communal response can't be like black or white anymore. So, I don't know what, I'm engaging with this as you all are. I mean, I've read the book like 5 years ago, right? So I'm rereading it, I'm relearning it with you, and I don't have the answers like that, but I do appreciate, what are we always looking for? We're always looking for the answer. I don't see that anywhere in here. It's about looking for the question.
And for the relationship. You can't have a question and expect an answer unless there's another person. So you're looking for, you're navel gazing, you're looking for the umbilical cord, you're looking for someone to connect it to.
Right, yes. So we can look back on all of our schooling experiences, maybe all of our leadership experiences, and the other times we've been involved in things and kind of say, well, I wonder how we were operating then. I wonder how I was operating. Wonder, what was that important for me to do in that way? It's a lot. Sometimes we don't want to spend that much time in self-reflection. But I like that they've chosen to use the word self-awakening. All right, maybe we don't need reflecting, because reflecting just means I'm looking at the same thing. But awakening,
That's a good one.
something that comes up. So, good. We will do that. If there are any other thoughts on that, go just interrupt at any time if something comes up for you all as we move through that. So I want to move on. If there were anything about the stuff in chapter 2, which was started off by talking about call, vocation in the book now in chapter 2, which is, as you recall, the odd numbered chapters talk about the letters of the acronym, right? And the even numbered chapters are sort of a way to explore what that acronym represents. So creating safe space is tied to, in their vision here for the book, is tied to our discovering our story, call, purpose, vocation, vision. We give it lots of words, and they try to set a standard so that you understand when they use that word what they're talking about, right? Because we do have various ways we understand those words and have used them over time. And it's not just, I think what the key for me is, this is not just about going to a religious life, right? Like I had a call to ministry, right? And everybody thinks, well, that's just about, what you do in the church or what you do. But their connection is that, yes, it's a spiritual connection in call and purpose and vision and, what you do. But that's because it comes from knowing your story. That's what it goes back to. Knowing your story. And then they go to great lengths to talk about what are the things, the principles, and then the kind of assumptions we make about how people live or do not live into their purpose, right? Based on what are some of the restrictions, right? That's a whole piece of this chapter. They list these 8, I think, principles. I'm on page
Probably 55.
limiting perspectives, around call and purpose. And so that if we make a judgment about a call or a purpose, how might we be more, what kind of questions could we ask that would be more responsive to the people in the room, right? Because we make some assumptions based on our own backgrounds and color of our skin or upbringings or educational stuff, whatever it is. So for example, number 1, call is individualistic. Too often as we limit discussions about call to center around a single individual, as and like that person is disconnected, they say, from their community. What is your calling or purpose in life? This individualistic perspective is especially operative when people reserve the word call specifically for individuals pursuing a religious role, which is what I was just talking about. What is our shared purpose instead? What is our shared purpose? One of the different ways we are called to work together to accomplish this community's purpose. Thank you. See you later, Fred.
Nice, man. Have a good day.
Okay. Limiting perspective number 2. This is like, so what is your purpose in life? I'm a therapist. I'm an activist, with the examples they use. Instead, purpose is dynamic, unfolding. You can have been anything. It does not limit you to what you could be. Right? We often see that in people and like, oh, they're a doctor, and then you just stop. Not thinking they might need another purpose. Right? Perspective number 3, call is too idealized and extracted from what breaks our hearts. Yeah. Call is too idealized and extracted from what breaks our hearts. Dominant understandings of call are often sterile and stripped of any association with real sacrifice or suffering, implying that there is little to no cost related into answering a call. During a recent conversation on vocation, a white, upper-class mainline pastor confessed that as a young person responding to a call to ministry, he was always certain of a safety net provided by his family and network of support. As a result, he said he never felt risk associated with his call, except that he might not be paid as much money as his friends. So another way of thinking about this would be, what is the risk involved? She answered a public cry to remove the Confederate flag from the South Carolina State House, this gal, Bree Newsom, knowing that such an action would make her vulnerable to public scorn. Irv, I'm remembering a story that Eleanor told me yesterday about the Olympic torch passing through Greenville after they had passed a measure about not honoring gays and lesbians, and how she, yeah. And so I was thinking of
They passed it in our county, but not in our city.
right, but
And
her
so
standing
they-
up, yeah,
So they shrouded, as it came down I-85, they shrouded it in the county, but once it got in the city, it was unshrouded. And there was a big event in the middle of downtown, and Eleanor was in charge of it. And she got a lot of death threats, and
yeah.
it was a pretty big deal.
It was, and I was thinking about her risk in that, and
Yeah.
often how risk is part of this. And and certainly, we all have responsibilities, but she had children at home. That when that happened, she had children at home. So,
Our youngest child was probably 18, because this was in 92, because it was when the Olympics was in Atlanta.
mhm.
So this was kind of one of the last stops of the torch before it got to Atlanta.
So there you can think about it. If there's no risk involved, really, what did we used to say, skin in the game?
Yes.
You have skin in the game?
What?
Okay, so we're on page 56. I'm talking about, purpose is about choice. That's limiting perspective number 4. In truth, it says purpose involves a paradox. There are times when purpose chooses us. Life experiences prepare us and we respond. At other times, we choose our purpose by responding to an impulse or crisis when we are not even fully aware of the ways in which that moment may spark our call to a larger purpose. Purpose is a dance, a co-creative tension.
Huh.
It's not always diametrically opposed choices. It could be something we're responding to. And call is without prejudice is limiting perspective number 5. However, there's always preferences, biases, and prejudices to determine who gets to pursue their call. I think this is probably one of the most obvious things. Not everyone has the same opportunities that everyone else has. We know that, right? Purpose is always being mediated. And another way we can build spaces designed to meet the needs of marginalized communities. We can create altruism pathways for people within marginalized communities to pursue purpose and passion and call. Yeah, I only know this like personally right now. we've got a couple of graduating seniors from Blue Ridge who are working with, Rachel, and I can't remember her last name. Do you know Patch's brother's girlfriend? What's her name? Do you know her?
No, I do not.
Oh, okay. But anyway, she's a college, helps kids get ready to go to college. And she's giving her time to help prepare these students from Blue Ridge to making better choices about where they're gonna go to college and what their vocation is. And she's just, that was putting together communities where there might not have been support. But that's how she's pursuing her purpose. Okay, number 6, we're gonna move, purpose is a privilege. That is not necessarily true either, he wants to go on to say, because he uses the example of Sojourner Truth. Did she not have a calling? Yes, she did. Did Nat Turner pursue a purpose? Not the Nat Turner who works here, the Nat Turner of the one who fought the rebellion, that Nat Turner. So it's not necessarily only limited to certain people, it's about creating a circumstance where they feel like they can. Discussions about call, go ahead.
As you're talking, I'm thinking, I feel that if we live intentionally, then purpose unfolds as we go. And I think, for me, I've got to keep my eye on living intentionally. And then it's easier to discern purpose.
And you move that into an I statement. Thank you. Yeah, it is about living intentionally. And what does that mean for everyone? We use these words a lot, like, I'm living intentionally. About what? What does that mean when we say that? To you, when you say I'm living intentionally? What does that mean?
It's not necessarily waking up and thinking, what am I doing today? Wake up, gird your loins, and be about the day, and don't, question, why am I here? What am I doing? And if, I think God's been pretty direct with letting me know when I'm going down the wrong path. And I feel like I've learned to trust that.
To feel safe with that decision. Trusting God to be our internal guide. Trusting God to be our map maker, our compass. I don't know what word we're doing. How I trust God to be that's the intentionality you're talking about. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
It's like being in a space capsule, once it was all turned over, and quit picking all of these different paths you're looking at. Just, this is probably the one. Get in the spacecraft. Well, I don't dare get out. I can't breathe. So I don't know. It just feels like unknowing to me. And if I go to open that door, I really do think it's almost like I feel the Lord grabbing my hand saying, "You're good. Don't go there." I don't know. It's hard to explain for me.
No, in fact, making a stab at it is a great start.
Yeah.
I've heard many of your stories over the years, Sharon, right? And all of them have not all of them, many of them have that same element of trust about the decision making. And also that kind of rare rear view mirror reflection to prop it up, right? To give it credence, right? Yeah.
And that comes with having made enough mistakes along the way. But finally, it all comes together.
Yeah.
I can't breathe outside of this space capsule, so don't leave.
Welcome to the world.
Right, and it's not, that is not a, again, I think this is illustrated in chapter 3, that's not necessarily a value. The failure value is not around. That is not that's not what we value, that's not what we share in the culture often. Right? Oh, right, success is what we value.
Yeah.
We have to be able to understand that failure has as much redemption in it as success.
Well, failure is your best teacher.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It gives you some ownership over it. Now whoa, did I blow it there?
Yeah.
And
we couldn't do that without some sort of self-awakening, like to be able to see that. You might run from it, you might do some other things, but, right? Yeah. All right, number 8. Purpose only applies to individuals. That's a limiting perspective. And that we can understand that organizations have purpose too.
And I just really started that, Vigner's,
Right.
place God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet.
Yes. That's your purpose. I think when I went through discernment, certainly that statement was like on the top of every piece of paper, right? So identifying what is that? What is my greatest joy? And the world's deepest need. And sometimes along the way I've forgotten that for sure,
Yeah. Well,
course direction.
yeah.
All right, the rest of the chapter does talk a little bit about Ubuntu, which I've already given you a handout for that. If you don't have it, I think I have some extras. I want you to look over that again, see that concept about interdependence. This is something we've been talking about in Breathing Underwater, right? We know that those of us who have been in relationships with people who have addictions, we are generally known as what? Codependent. Right. Enablers, codependents. What we're striving for, and independence is what we, talk to our toddlers about, our preschoolers, our high school age children. What we're looking for is this interdependence. There's not a hierarchy there, is there? Interdependence shows this relationship that we have with other people. It's about relationship. So that may be a new word to some of us, but to think about what kind of relationships we have. Are we in the fixing mode? Are we fixing folks all the time? Okay, then we're codependent. No doubt about it. Are we letting people fix us? Then we're dependent. Are we in a mutual relationship of respect? Then we're interdependent. This is what we're striving for. So that is really, I don't know what I said here, let's see.
I was just gonna say on the Ubuntu
Yeah.
page that you gave us, where it's those bullet points coming down, I'm really feeling conscious of that last one, that last bullet. I love that. We share the stewardship of one another's time.
Yeah.
We share the stewardship of one another's time.
So there's the value of,
Stay where you are again.
she's reading from the paper called this Ubuntu paper.
Oh,
Yeah.
then, okay.
Part of your handouts, they're in your emails.
You got an extra one on there.
Ellen sent that to us by email.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah, cause I read it, but it's.
Okay, did you see it in your email?
It's better sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't think she wants me here. No, she doesn't send me anything. I'm kidding.
The website under the course title as well.
Okay.
Which one you were talking about?
The last bullet.
We share the stewardship of one another's time. How many of these bullet points on this page do you notice from the governing covenant principles?
Yeah.
And, we avoid fixing, saving, and advising.
Right? We turn to wonder,
We invite and we do not compel.
right? We learn from silence and we honor the group's confidence.
Avoid fixing, saving, advising.
So, and then I gave you this example of a young adult campus minister that talked about her experience of Ubuntu at General Convention, which was like 10 years ago at that General Convention. That was the theme. Michael Battle, as you recall, is the dude who wrote with Bishop Tutu, the Book of Joy.
Oh.
And that's how you might know his name. He's a priest in the, served in South Africa and then came back and I think he's on staff somewhere at a seminary. But, he is the one who sort of, well, with Bishop Tutu, brought this to America in that sense. So, okay, so just, see, I hope you can find that, Kate. If you can, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So our purpose here is to create then a place of holy listening. Maybe not holy speaking, but holy listening. And for all of us who are really good at speaking, this is the harder task. And so we were gonna do delighted, listening exercises today, but we may just do them next week, and we will do them every week because I think I want you to, this is what your homework is. Besides reading chapter 3 and 4, I want you to think about what kinds of self-awakening questions do you want to ask? And maybe you're also asking that same question that Fred is asking. What is my story? Right? So what is my story? And what are some self-awakening questions I can ask? Now, I think what we understand about the chapter on chapter 3 about self-awakening questions is they can be anything. It might be dependent on the group before you. You know what I'm saying? So it might not, but for this group, as we learn, what would self-awakening questions be? And I included this little, and I think I can start, we do usually start and end with either a prayer, a piece of poetry, a piece of scripture, all intended, I hope, right, to open up some of that breathing space into holy listening. So I found, this is in the book, but this poem by William Stafford. If you don't know William Stafford, I know him because he was the poet laureate of Oregon for a very long time. And there's places where there's statues with his poems on them and so forth. I did not know him before that. He wrote, at the end of the 19th and early 20th century. So here's this poem he wrote. Deciding. One mine the Indians worked had gold so good, they left it there for God to keep. One mine the Indians worked had gold so good, they left it there for God to keep. So as we leave today, ponder maybe that poem. We will work on delighted listening exercises and just look over the notes that I made about that, and then consider what self-awakening questions we might be asking each other when we gather next time.